Your ego will soothe all of your pain with pleasure. And your ego is very, very good at masking your pain. When you strip off those band-aids, it's like taking away the false layers that are covering up your soul. As you strip away those layers, it's painful. Every layer you take off, you realize, oh my gosh, that's not who I really am. There's more underneath. And every time you strip away another layer, you think, was I lying to myself? I mean, what was going on in my life that I believed that this is who I really am? And then lo and behold, there's more underneath. After a few layers, you're really lost. You don't know who you are anymore. And who you really are, it's probably 5 or 6 more layers down there. You just have to keep going. Every time you take off a layer, your ego is going to scream because it's dying. It's saying, don't do this. You know who we are. We're bikini girls. But then you take off the bikini girl mask, and underneath there's someone who's actually very driven, very ambitious. And then you take off the career mask and you realize there's someone underneath who's really actually scared and unsure. And then even underneath that, you're not scared. You're actually excited about this next phase of your life. The point is this, you're not going to know that. I didn't know that at that time. I was just freaking out. Because every time I tried to lift off another layer covering up my soul, I could hear my ego screaming at me all these stories from my past about how I used to be. Used to be this, used to be that, used to be skinny, used to be fun, I could not hear the voice of truth underneath that was reminding me of who I really am inside. The truth is, you didn't used to be anything. You're still becoming. Please write this in your journal. I didn't used to be anything. I am still becoming. I had just forgotten the dream of my soul after all those years I spent in timeout. When you're in timeout, you do a lot of things to pass the time. And if enough time goes by, you start to think that's who you are. And you forget that you were just doing those things to pass the time. It's not who your soul really is. I did not know it then, but I eventually came to realize that every single problem I've ever had in my life stemmed back to having a broken dream. Every single problem I've had in my life stemmed back to what was underneath all of those band-aids. When I started our church, Hale Ho'onani, it was a lot of work and there was no free time, and it was really, really, really hard at first. And that hard work reminded me of what was underneath all those band-aids, who I really am inside. Week after week, month after month, I was pulling off the layers of my mask, and the better I felt. And the focus became less on the hard work and more on how my masks were falling off. And I realized that I was finding out exactly who I am. There is no way I could have known this at that time, because I had to regain my senses. Time out is like a sensory deprivation chamber. I had no clear vision of the future. I had to regain my eyesight when I got out into the wilderness. I couldn't hear the voice of my truth. I could only hear what nurse ego was telling me to make me feel better about myself. And I was numb. I mean, that's why you go to timeout. You get all warm and fuzzy and numbed out. And I had to regain my feelings and my senses, my emotions back. And my willpower was really weak in timeout. So I had to regain my iron will, my ambition, my drive again. When you do something new, or you start a new phase in life, yes, you feel blind and deaf at first. And I know that Cher is really scared about moving out of state. Just like Samantha starting over again at age 79. You feel like you messed up. You feel like if I had just started saving $1,000 every month for the past 20 years, right now I'd have a nest egg. But instead I have nothing. Or I shouldn't have married that guy. Or I shouldn't have taken that other job. Or I should have created some sort of security for myself. I want you to forgive yourself because none of those things are possible in time out. You cannot create any sort of stability in time out. You're trying to grieve over something that wasn't even possible. If you had saved a nest egg during time out, when you leave time out, you have to give that money back. Or you're going to get scammed out of it, or you're going to lose it, the money in a house fire or through a divorce. Adam and Eve were not allowed to take any organic produce from the Garden of Eden into the wilderness. They left with the leather clothes that God made them, but essentially nothing. No souvenirs, no mementos, no savings, nothing. Because it's too fragile. None of your blessings that you created in time out survive in the actual wilderness. They disintegrate as soon as they hit the real world. In time out, everyone was nice to you. In the real world, is anyone nice to you? In time out, you got paid for doing nothing. In the real world, do people pay you for doing nothing? In time out, you were in love. In the real world, as soon as you ask your lover to take the trash out 70,000 times, are you still in love with them? I understand that it's really scary to leave time out and to leave the Garden of Eden and enter the wilderness. But actually, the wilderness is the only place where everything is real. If someone is nice to you in the wilderness, it's not because you're both stoned in the garden of love at this 5-star resort called Eden, where no one has any worries. No, if someone's nice to you in the wilderness, it's because they actually really like you. If someone pays you in the wilderness, it's because you're worth it. In the wilderness, there are no masks, no layers, no band-aids covering up the truth. If you're in love with this person, it's because you love them even after asking them to take out the trash 70,000 times. Stuff's real in the wilderness. Your relationships are real in the wilderness. When you were in timeout, that wasn't the real you. I can pamper anyone into being the nicest marshmallow on the planet. But in the wilderness, who you really are, finally, after all these years, emerges. Your ego might be content with not knowing the truth, but your soul has been waiting your whole life to finally, after all these tears, to emerge and be free. Every time you venture out of your comfort zone and into the wilderness, you are setting your soul free.